Now, what is common between a football match and the toss of a coin? Only one thing, that you don't know the outcome in advance. Now, for such events whose outcome is not known in advance with absolute certainty, these events, their outcomes, are represented using random variable. For example, the number of views that this video is going to get. I don't know with absolute certainty how many views this video is going to get. So it can be represented using a random variable. Let's take a familiar example. The number of goals in a football match. We don't know with absolute certainty how many goals are going to be there in a football match. So we can represent it using a random variable. Here x is equal to number of goals in a match. So the value of x is going to be equal to the number of goals scored in a match. If the number of goals is 5, then x is going to be 5 and so on. Now, there's always a probability associated with random variables. Now, let's say x represents the number of goals in a match. So, the probability that x is less than or equal to 1, which means there is at least one goal in a match, which is going to be very high. We know that there are at least one goal in almost every match. So there's 99% chance for this particular case that the probability that the number of goals is at least one is 0.99. Now, similarly, that probability that number of goals in a match is greater than 100, which is almost impossible unless a very strong team is playing against very weak team. The probability that number of goals or x is greater than 100 in a particular match is very less. So we can represent it by a probability of 2% or even less. This is just arbitrary for this particular case. So basically there are two kinds of random variables, continuous and discrete. As the name suggests, discrete random variables have discrete values. Let's say we pick a random school and we pick a random class, and we represent the number of students in this class using a random variable. Now that random variable will be a discrete random variable because you can't have 53.5 students in a class. The number of students is always going to be a discrete quantity. In contrast, let's say we pick a random student in a class and we want to measure their height. So the height is a continuous quantity. It can be anything. It can be 63.5 or 176.33, something like that. So a continuous random variable can be height of student in a class in centimeters. So that would be a continuous random variable.